Welcome, teacher friend. I'm Lori.
And I'm Melissa.
We are two literacy educators in Baltimore. We want the best for all kids, and we know you do too.
Our district recently adopted a new literacy curriculum, which meant a lot of change for everyone. Lori and I can't wait to keep learning about literacy with you today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Literacy Podcast. Melissa and Lori love literacy. We are really excited for our guests today because we have two very busy teachers who took time out of their very busy schedules to talk with us. And I just can't wait. We're going to talk about some incredible content with them teaching wit and wisdom, using geodes, science of reading stuff. So I'm excited.
Yeah. You know, teachers are our favorites to talk to because they're doing the real work. But I know we've talked a lot about having, especially in K2, having wit and wisdom, having foundations, having geodes. It can be a lot. And we know that our teachers today, Danielle and April, have a lot to tell about how to do that in a way that really helps to make sense for kids. So we'll get into those conversations with them.
Absolutely. So Danielle and April, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yeah. So I'll ask Danielle to go first because you're closer to me on the screen.
Okay.
Would you mind just giving a little introduction and sharing, what grade you teach and where you're teaching and anything else that you feel like is important for listeners to know?
Okay, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited. Even last night, I'm just trying to go to sleep and you get those nerves, just thinking about all the stories to tell and just the passion that lies within this work that, we do for kids. So my name's Danielle Hunter. I'm a third grade teacher. I teach literacy at Vista Peak Exploratory, which is in Aurora Public School District. And this is my 10th year here. So I've really been able to see the evolution of just how our community of learners has grown throughout this period of time. And I'm excited to just talk with you all and reflect on my practice and be able to share some of the things that are going well here at VPE.
Awesome. And you're in Colorado.
We're in Colorado, yep.
Anyone's listening, I'm
Aurora, Colorado.
So.
Aurora, Colorado.
Denver.
Yep. Yay.
Awesome. And April, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's April Evans. I also teach at Vista Peak Exploratory in Aurora, Colorado. I'm a first grade teacher here, and this is my 8th year at Vista Peak, 15th year teaching. Most of that has been first grade. That's the highest I've gone is first grade. It's, I can't seem to leave it. I love it so much. I'm afraid that it's just not going to be as good somewhere else. So I've got to stick with first grade. And so, I'm excited to be here and share our journey with you.
Yeah. Just to add on too, so I've been teaching third grade here for 9 years, and I got to teach first grade 1 year. And so April and I were colleagues, and we experimented with a lot of different curriculum and lots of learning and passion.
We've gone through a lot over the years. Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing.
It is.
I think we should start with you guys telling us about wit and wisdom and your wit and wisdom story and how you got to be where you are today teaching wit and wisdom. Because I know it didn't just happen yesterday. So tell us a little bit about how you got to be wit and wisdom teachers.
Yeah, it was quite an evolution, right? You had, and then over to, I imagine, in your 10, 15 years of experience. So I'm looking forward to hearing about a little before and then how you got to implement wit and wisdom and geodes and the Foundations trifecta.
Yeah. So I'll start, and then April, if you want to just add on, because I know just thinking about my first year here in the district, we really started with Mondo curriculum, and I was coming from another district in Colorado. So Mondo was a very new curriculum for me. and I was coached around that. And we were also using Fontes and Pinnell, and it kind of, evolved slowly. I had lots of questions about, is this really best for kids? And then we kind of adopted Lucy Calkins, and so we've gone through a lot of different curriculum and a lot of different opportunities to kind of play around with different things. And just recently, so this is our 4th year going into Wit and Wisdom, and before April kind of jumps in to talk a little bit about where we're at, I had the opportunity to go with a group of teachers and our leader to another school in Colorado, and we visited the school to really see Wit and Wisdom in action. And so we wanted to kind of just see, is this something that might be a good fit for our kids? And so I just remember going into that school, and one of the first things that I noticed was just the close reading. Walking into the classrooms and really seeing them just deeply engaged in text. And so for me, I was bought in pretty quickly. And then I just know that we came back to our school and kind of brought it to our teachers and had lots of conversations about, you know, our DLT, our distributive leadership team, talked a little bit about EL and Wit and Wisdom. And we did a lot of work digging into the curriculum to see what would be best for our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were both bought in right away. I just remember noticing complex text and, like you said, the close reading. That was the first thing that stuck out to me. Going back a little bit, though, my experience, so I experienced the same thing, Mondo and then Lucy Calkins. And I remember the year before leadership administration changed in our building, just thinking like something was missing, right? There's that group of students that with the curriculum we were using, they were able to learn and they were thriving, but there was a majority of students that were struggling and we just weren't making gains. And I remember going to my POC, so my point of contact, the vice principal at the time, and saying, what's the chances of getting a new literacy curriculum? There's got to be other things out there that we can explore. And so we just happened to get new administration, and with that came the new curriculum. I didn't get to go and see the school, the teaching like Danielle did, but I do remember digging into the curriculum and just recognizing the high standards, the work that students are doing, the complex text that they're digging into, and yeah. Wit and Wisdom led to Geodes. Geodes came, so we got Wit and Wisdom November of that year because we had to, find the curriculum that we wanted. We got it in November. That spring, Geodes was released for first grade. And when Geodes was released, it's like my mind exploded with all of this. Whoa, we had been using guided reading text, and maybe this is a whole other conversation. I don't know. I could talk forever about this, but Geodes came, and the connection to Wit and Wisdom was mind blowing. The what they were reading in Geodes directly connected to what we were learning in Wit and Wisdom. It was beautiful. And then the next year, we incorporated foundations. And so now we have the trifecta, like all 3 programs working together. And it's just, I like to say it creates magic in the classroom. And I'm like, it literally makes me just smile and so happy for our students.
That's so cool.
I love that.
Can I also add that going back to what you had said about like Daniela, what you had mentioned that you were using early, before you adopted high quality materials. In Baltimore, it's such a similar story. We had Mondo kits as well, and I never really fully understood them, and it felt like really difficult to understand. And we had like the leveling with guided reading and things like that. And then it's interesting because we also at the end came down to EL and Wit and Wisdom. And the thing that tipped us, I'd love to hear if what tipped you toward Wit and Wisdom, or, what tipped the scales to Wit and Wisdom. But the thing that tipped us was the teacher guides in EL were very heavy on teacher material, and it felt more user-friendly to use wit and wisdom, as well as like multiple other things. But I remember that being a really distinct conversation that stood out to me, that like this might not be as user-friendly. And anyway, I was curious if you had any insight on that, because I think it's, people listening are always like, what, they're curious for the stories behind, like the really specific nitty gritty details. So I'm curious if you have any details like that you can share about what tipped it toward wit and wisdom. I mean, besides the close reading and the incredible texts and the integrated approach, all of those really cool things that we could talk about forever and ever.
Yeah. So, when I reflect on just my experience in the classroom, I just remember Mondo and having conversations with kids about what level am I, and like, oh, well, my mom said that I can't read this level because this is too hard for me. And it's just as defeating. And so it started with me just really reflecting on, are we really doing the right work, that needs to be done? I've always been passionate about reading and writing and that integration and the craft that comes within both. And so I did have that opportunity to see it in action. And what I saw is just the engagement, the strategies, the interaction with kids, the community that it fosters, because we have different experiences and background knowledge. So playing around and kind of piloting with the materials and just jumping into the work, I came back immediately and just immediately started the pilot lesson, module 0. And of course, the text was Thank You, Mr. Falker by Patricia Polacco, who is one of my favorite authors. And it reminded me in that moment of how these stories are what our kids see themselves in. You talked about the engaging text, but watching the kids and hearing the kids in the classroom and participating in Socratic seminar, it was that feeling, the experience of just having kids truly be immersed into learning. And it also, for me as a teacher, felt so great to have everything integrated and not having to have 5 or 6 different lesson plans, really preparing for, oh my gosh, showing up an hour early before plan time in the morning and getting book boxes and going through and pulling books for certain levels. It just, it's the feeling for me. I think that kind of also defines me as a person. I'm a feeler.
I would agree.
I'm a feeler. I'm a very
You sure are. You sure are. Something going back to EL, and I don't have much memory of EL. But is it a K-8 curriculum?
See, and I don't remember,
because I feel like what tipped us is we teach in a K-8.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be aligned K-8.
And I believe they were revising their middle school. At least when we were adopting, they only had K-5 available at the time.
Okay.
That could be different at this point.
Ed Report's only rated K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe there is a 6-8, but I can't find it.
I think they originally had one, but they were revising it.
Okay. Melissa, are we getting a cameo from your cat?
Always. Sorry. He's a very needy cat.
The cat, the cat is passionate about literacy too.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think it was important for our building to be vertically aligned, and having the actual text in students' hands. They each get a copy of the text was huge.
So important.
The high expectations of wit and wisdom was huge. So
I actually was wondering about that when you guys were talking, because, going from the levels to everyone's reading these complex texts, I'm just, we get questions a lot about, well, what about students who are coming to my 3rd grade class and they're below grade level, and now there's this really complex text that everyone's expected to read? Just wondering what your experience was with that.
So my experience in 1st grade, I would say, is that in wit and wisdom, we're not teaching foundational reading skills necessarily in wit and wisdom, right? We're teaching our reading standards, our writing standards, speaking and listening. And those are around books that my students most of them are not able to read. These are complex texts. They're listening, their ability to understand when listening and speaking is greater than what they can read, right? So we went from a curriculum that had grade level text. It was like, I can't remember one of the books from Lucy Calkins. It was like Duck in the Park or something. And we are trying to analyze a book that a first grader can read. If you can imagine how much I wanted to pull my hair out of my head after 3 days of reading like a duck, splashing in the puddle, it's awful. They're not worthy of rereading, right?
Yeah.
And so going to complex text, students are able to understand and take on this learning through, first, I want to say, the content stages. The way that those are made are super supportive. It's layers, right? We're not going in and saying, what is the essential meaning of my librarian is a camel on day one?
Correct.
We're leading up to that. And so the program design is supportive, but also I'm not asking first graders to read these texts. I'm asking them to think deeply about the texts and analyze, synthesize all of that. So that's my experience with the change between a grade level text, trying to get deep into a grade level text in first grade versus a more complex text.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Just adding on to what you said, April, when we think about the reading rope and just those components of it, I'm specifically thinking of a student this week, who has found some just immense success. And that word recognition is really hard right now. It's a struggle. And we know that there's some other factors that have come into play with just the current state of our world. But I keep going back to the visual of Scarborough's rope and looking at his background knowledge and the vocabulary knowledge, the language, how he articulates himself and what he brings into the conversations. And it was such a powerful moment this week when he got up in front of the class and the class actually started clapping for him just authentically because he has found this confidence within himself. And when I say that this curriculum really fosters a community of learners,
that word just popped into my head, Danielle.
I
was thinking the same exact thing because clapping happens in my class as well. Go ahead, sorry.
It is. No, and I think those are the moments, where we know that we're doing right by kids because we're not all at our seats reading our own books. We're collaborating and we're fostering, this environment where kids can thrive and be themselves and see themselves in books. And April, you talked a lot about just that content knowledge. I mean, we all have so much knowledge. And so just building on that and using that as an access point has really been just a mindset change for me.
Yeah.
I often think, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. When you say mindset change, that makes me think about we really did have to unlearn a lot of things that we had worked so hard on for so long. And so it took a lot of vulnerability from us, a lot of flexibility, but I think we're continuing to grow. And when you say content knowledge, the first thing that stuck out to me one of the first things, as I've already said that, when we got Wit and Wisdom was that we're not just planning for standards now and task-based lessons. We have two pieces that we have to consider. What knowledge are we building in students? I have to plan for the knowledge that these students have to learn, because without that knowledge, they are not going to be successful on the skills that I'm asking them to do and the tasks that the standards are asking them to do. So we went from just really standards-based, task-based to now really thinking about the content knowledge and both sides of that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's I just imagine what happens, like in your previous world prior to Wit and Wisdom and Geodes. I imagine that it would just be focusing on the skills and not the knowledge, which when you think about it is that's leaving like half off. That's a lot to miss. And
Yeah.
I think that's why the four of us are sitting here today, because when Melissa and I were in Baltimore, when we were looking at the materials, we're like, this is it. This is what has been missing for so long from the literacy that we've been trying to implement. But then also that cohesion piece that you mentioned, April, I think you mentioned that, right? With the span of K-8, like having that cohesiveness, having that, seeing like both that horizontal and vertical growth. So, across the year and then up through the grade bands, and just how everything grows over time. Is there anything that, like, keeping that in mind, is there anything that, April, you in first grade, and then maybe Danielle, you in third grade, are seeing as kids like progress over time? Like, I'm wondering if maybe the way that a Socratic seminar is executed, or something that you could elevate, like an instructional routine or a writing model that you'd like to share as an example of how that might grow over time.
Yeah, so specifically Socratic seminar, that's not something that I had ever considered doing with the first grader before Wit and Wisdom. And it's one of the most enjoyable times in our classroom now. Students love it. So we like to use the fishbowl method in first grade, just considering attention span and things like that. Fishbowl is effective. And so really in Socratic seminar, you get to see the knowledge and skill coming out all at the same time, right? They're able to express themselves, and it's a really great opportunity for all students of all ability and everything to have a chance to speak and shine and create community in the classroom. Something that I like to do before Socratic seminar is giving students a chance to think through their thinking around the topic, around the question. I give them a chance to sit down and write, specifically pointing their direction, or pointing them in the direction of our vocabulary wall that we've put up with our wit and wisdom words. And so encouraging them to use that vocabulary in a purposeful way in their writing. And this writing is not, we're not grading writing on sentence structure and grammar. I want their knowledge on the page. And so once they've had a chance to think through that, they've used the vocabulary in a purposeful way, then we bring that to the carpet. And we do the fishbowl. Half of the students are in a chair. They love it. They actually, the ones in the middle sometimes pretend like they're fish when they go to sit down. And so the ones sitting on the ground are in the fishbowl. And they know that everyone has to speak. They've already had time to process that thinking. And now that they're sitting, everyone has to speak. And the beautiful thing, another thing about Wit and Wisdom, is that it teaches speaking and listening standards, whereas before we hadn't taught specifically, how do I respond to another person? How do I carry on a conversation with somebody else? And so now, someone will speak and they'll say, I agree with you because in this text it said, XYZ, or I disagree with you. I had a different idea when I was thinking about this question. So Socratic seminar is a beautiful example. It's like a culmination of that focusing question, or the focusing question arc with that I'm sorry. I got all these ideas going in my head. So like the culmination would be like the focusing question task they're writing, but we also do Socratic seminar at the end of that. And so they get to speak and listen to their classmates' ideas.
Yeah. As you were speaking, April, I was just jotting some things down too. Socratic seminar has really been kind of the foundation for where kids are also finding success in writing, just seeing themselves as writers. And so just adding on to what you were saying, I was thinking about how all of these components of Wit and Wisdom really foster just the independence and the intentionality for us as teachers. It's just all connected and integrated. So in third grade, thinking about this year and previous years, our students have struggled with writing. and really being able to explain their ideas. And something I've noticed over time is, I will talk with a student, I'll confer with them, and they're able to verbalize it. And so they have that language, they have their ideas and their background knowledge, and then the knowledge that they're understanding from text, but then they're struggling with the transfer to putting it on paper. And so I just am always reminding them, what we think, we say. What we say, we write. And I think for us as educators, we just also have to live in that space of it's messy and it's going to take time and we have to be patient. And I finally, right now, this school year, I'm getting to that spot where I'm seeing all of that hard work really come in, and I'm seeing the kids' growth. So recently we had a focusing question task, and Socratic Seminar really supported them in that oral rehearsal and being able to practice the vocabulary and use the vocabulary to explain their ideas. And that was a huge aha for me this year is, oh my gosh, vocabulary, we're not teaching this in isolation. Yes, I have a vocabulary wall, but it's there for access, to remind kids that these are the vocabulary that we're using to explain, to justify, to understand these topics. And our kids are now starting to attack 4-paragraph essays. And
it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Third grade writing is amazing.
and boy does it evolve throughout the year too.
Right.
Like thinking about them coming in and struggling with even sentences sometimes. I know I'm just kind of specifically thinking about the current state of our world and where we're at, but
yeah.
Sure.
Danielle, quick question, and then I know we have lots more to talk about. But when you said that example about the vocabulary wall and students really using those words to explain, to justify, can you share if maybe there's a word wall or vocabulary wall in the past, how that might be different from what you're doing now in Wit and Wisdom?
Yeah. Well, even when I started Wit and Wisdom, my current state of practice was really, thinking about the vocabulary words. What are these words that we need to know, be able to read? And I think my practice has really grown a lot in the past 2 years of really moving into Wit and Wisdom and understanding the purpose of why we're teaching vocabulary and how we're using it. So a couple years ago, I would have like, here's some sheets with the vocabulary words, matching the definition. Okay, you can use it. Oh, you're proficient with this because you understand the meaning of it. And then it just kind of sits there, and now it's really teaching students the purpose of why and how we use this vocabulary. And so in Socratic Seminar, they have their planners, they have the word banks, and they have the background knowledge and understanding of those words and how to really use that in speaking, and then bring that into writing. And in our Socratic seminars too, a lot of our kids are giving feedback to each other. So, my students that are in the inner circle, they're speaking, and the kids, they're partnered with students who are in the outer circle, and those students in the outer circle are giving feedback to them, and they're kind of, tapping them gently like, oh, I noticed you did this. So it's this process of just giving feedback to each other and really evolving as learners, as a community. I keep going back to that, but really that's
great.
It's kind of what I notice.
And I imagine that must be so different from what happened before, in terms, April, did you want to add to that?
Well, yeah. Could you tell that I was like,
please let me add.
My hands up. So just thinking about before and a word wall before. So I'm going to say this now. I do not have a word wall in my classroom anymore, and I'm seeing so much success. And this is for maybe like a science of reading time in this podcast through David Kilpatrick's work. So much more success. So word wall is gone. We did not have vocabulary words up in the first grade classroom. And if they were, it's like we glanced over it maybe with the science, with our science or social studies lessons. But now we have my where my word wall used to be is divided into the modules for wit and wisdom. So all of my module 1 vocabulary words are on yellow cards with pictures on them, and students know how important those words are to use in our discussion and our writing. They know that that's what is really going to get their point across. And so my module 2 words are up there, and then I put module 3. We're in module 3 right now. And I wanted to make the point, though, that I am seeing the transferring of these vocabulary words into our Geodes time. So often they're using the word powerful and force when we're reading books about these same concepts. They are using those same words when speaking at our small group table.
I'm so glad you went there, April, because that was my next question for you. So let's actually dig in there a bit.
Melissa, before you get in, can I ask April and Danielle one quick thing? And then, okay. Can you all send us pictures of your walls? And we would love to include them in our newsletter. So that our subscribers can see what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So now let's dig in a little bit. I think, teachers just want to hear so much about, like, how do you actually take these different pieces, your small group time with Geodes, your foundations time, your wit and wisdom time. We talked a lot about your wit and wisdom time. Like, how do you put those pieces together so that it doesn't feel like 3 separate things happening? And as specific as you want to get about, like, what your literacy block actually looks like, because teachers want to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
do you want me to start? Do you want to start?
I'll start.
Go.
Because this is actually another something that I've kind of taken on. And again, like when we were first piloting and starting with wit and wisdom, my focus, oh my gosh, like my slides were like 23, 25 slides. And now it's like I've condensed it and it all makes sense. You just got to give yourself time because the pieces will come together. They will. But so I just want to talk a little bit about, to your question, Melissa, we start with foundations. And so when my kids come back from exploratories this year, they come in, they grab their foundations boards, and we start our day with writing into the day. And I've included writing into the day just to kind of foster the creative aspect of writing and the craft of writing, and to really just have like low stakes, no pressure, just write. So this week we're just doing would you rather statements because it supports our opinion writing. So after writing into the day, we get into our foundations. And I've started our foundations lessons with actually bringing the vocabulary from our modules. And we do reading work. So I'll put the vocabulary words on the slide, and we're really marking the words. We're really attacking those words. And yesterday it was really powerful because there was a student that I asked them, I said, okay, well, I noticed a couple of us just kind of scooping, and there's lots of scoops, but there's only 3 syllables in this word. So why do we have 6 scoops or 1 scoop? And a student raised his hand and he said, Mrs. Hunter, we mark words to learn language. We mark words to read them correctly. We want to read these words correctly. And then another student, I'd like to add on, and he's like, the other student was like, oh, we're going to write these words too. We're going to use them. So it's like these aha moments keep coming naturally almost. And I'm like, they're seeing the purpose of this, So we start with integrating that vocabulary in our foundations. And then we get into our literacy lesson. And I have recently started playing with Geodes during our WIN block. WIN block is our designated intervention block that every single student in our school has. So it's this, our students who are bilingual go to the designated ELD block, and our students who are in WIN, which stands for What I Need, are getting extra support. And so I've recently started playing with Geodes this week. Very new. As a 3rd grade teacher, we don't have Geodes. So I just kind of jumped in. I was like, you know what? It's going to be messy. Just jump in. And it was just one of my favorite days of the entire year. We're reading a book about Brown versus Board of Education. And we're practicing long vowels and vowel teams. And it all came together. Students were making connections. They were while we're learning about space exploration in Module 2 right now, they were still able to make connections to geodes. They were noticing that the Brown versus Board of Education had some connections to how people are pioneers and advocate and make change in the world. And I had a student using the vocabulary that we had talked from Foundations and talking about segregation, talking about astronauts or people that worked for NASA who faced these challenges, and they were bringing this into Geodes. So while my experience is a little bit different than April's with Geodes, and it's not as connected as far as content or knowledge, they're making connections, and I'm starting to see everything really build on top of each other. The students are as well.
Oh, I love hearing that my first graders that were with me get to revisit some geodes. That's awesome. Would you like me to talk about first grade now?
Yes, please.
Yeah?
Is that good?
Okay.
Is that good, Melissa? Okay, perfect.
All right.
Yeah, my cat's being super loud right now. Sorry, I just muted for a second.
All right. Well, so when I think of the programs that we have going on right now in first grade, we've got Wit and Wisdom. And I also come back to Scarborough's rope, Danielle. That's an easy visual representation for me to think about the science of reading and how we're hitting every single piece of that rope in every day in first grade. Wit and Wisdom is really hitting that language comprehension, right? And we've got Foundations that's hitting the word recognition strands. But the magic happens when we're in Geodes. It's amazing. Geodes is the bridge between Wit and Wisdom and Foundations. So they are learning about an endearing topic in Wit and Wisdom that is worthy of studying for 9 weeks. And they're also reading about that in
April, can you give
Geodes.
some examples of topics that you all do in first grade?
Yeah, so right now we are in Module 3 is the power of wind. And at first you think, oh, wind. Okay, like first graders are going to get
wind.
Yeah, what are we going to learn about wind? First graders after this module, they can teach you how wind is made. They can teach you how it affects different objects on Earth. It shapes rocks, it shapes trees, how storms affect communities, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards. They can also tell how wind is used by humans. We have harnessed the wind to be able to irrigate fields, to grind grain. They explore The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. That's our final book for this module. And so it's these big topics, right? We're not just learning about wind. We go outside and feel it. We're really learning about humans' interaction with wind over time and how it can be devastating and destroy things, as well as really save communities in areas that need the wind to do a job for a purpose. Yeah. So
helpful,
that's
helpful and harmful, right?
Right. Absolutely. So that's the module that we're in right now. I would say, we have our Cinderella unit at the end of the year, and that the journey around the world in that unit is unbelievable. The world knowledge that they gain. So I would say those two modules are my favorite. But going back to kind of my block, so we've got the bridge geodes between Foundations. So what we're learning in Wit and Wisdom, they're reading about in geodes, and then what we're learning in Foundations, they're applying in geodes that same day. So we have Wit and Wisdom in the beginning of the day, and then we have our Foundations block, a 30-minute block, and when I first started Foundations, I was really teaching it to fidelity. I wanted to, and this was at the beginning of my learning of the science of reading. And so I really just wanted to teach it what it said. But now, the more that I learn about the science of reading, Scarborough's rope, the 4-part processor, I'm able to change it. I'm able to take aspects and add more and really meet my students' needs with more learning that I get. So we're in Foundations, and then I'll usually end with some kind of a dictation, whether it's one sentence or a couple of words, or a full dictation where they're doing sounds, words, trick words, and a sentence. Students go have snack, and I take that data right then, and I split it into my 5 reading groups that are based on Foundations assessments, by the way, and I call over my groups that I see 3 groups a day, and I look at what they did. Sorry. I look at what they did that day in Foundations on that dictation, and I address those needs in the group. And every student is reading the same book in my class, and that was the biggest change.
What do those groups look like? Can you get detailed? What books? How, and what are the other students doing as well? That's a question we get asked all the time. What about the other ones?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I have 5 groups based on, like I said, Foundations dictation. So based on their phonics knowledge, that's where we know that accuracy is our number 1 priority when teaching students how to read. So I have to base them on their word knowledge, and so I have 5 students per group. They come and sit down. I want to see my group 1, which has the largest gap to close. I want to see my group 1 4 days a week. I want to see group 2 and 3. I see them 3 days a week, and groups 4 and 5, I see them 2 days a week. They have the smallest gap to close. And so I do at least 15 minutes with my groups 1 and 2, 15 to 20 minutes, and the other groups 15 minutes. And so they'll come and sit down. They will start with a decodable reader that directly connects to the Foundations work. So Foundations provides some decodable readers for each unit. Mm-hmm. They read that, and then we get into that word work with Elkonin boxes. So they're on my table. I taped them on my table. They have a marker, and I say, oh, it looks like a lot of us in this group missed this sound or missed this. Let's work on that. Mm-hmm. What are we seeing? And so this is really... it's interactive. Maybe I'm using counters in the Elkonin boxes first to really hit that phoneme processor. And then we're mapping it to sounds by writing it. And then, so we're hitting that word recognition strand of Scarborough's rope. And then we want to bring in the language comprehension strands. And so I start with vocabulary. I'll put up some vocabulary words and I'll say, what do you know about these words? And then I introduce the text, and how do you think these words might connect to this text? And I might play a video. That's another fun thing that they like. So like for Super Spiny Mouse, I found a video. There's no talking in it. It's just of a spiny mouse running around in Africa. And it's fun for them to, look and make connections to that. So we're building that background knowledge, vocabulary.
And Super Spiny Mouse is a geode for those who don't know.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So that's okay. In Geodes, we are only reading either a decodable passage from Foundations or the Geodes text that directly relates to the Foundations unit that we're in. And so then I introduce the text, and something that's helped me guide my comprehension and language comprehension teaching has been going through the content stages like we do in Wit and Wisdom with Geodes. So on the first day of a read, we're noticing and wondering, we're asking questions, we're building knowledge through illustrations. On the second day of the read, we really talk about what is this book about, organize our thinking. And then on the third, if they do have a fourth day with me, then we really, what is the essential meaning? We try to get deeper. So that's just been something that's guided me. So that's a little bit about what's going on at my table. Like I said, the biggest change is every student's reading the same book. And they can. Even your students that have the smallest gap. And I think because I did not give up on that from the beginning of the year, because I did not lessen what I wanted my students to do. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Your expectation?
I did not lower my expectations for that group. All 5 of my groups can fluently read every Geodes text that I put in front of them.
And when you say all students, April, are reading the same text, you don't just mean within your groups, correct? You mean every student in your classroom is reading the same. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah. So every group is reading. So all 25 students are reading
the same book.
Same Geodes, but yet their foundational skills needs are being addressed ahead of time so that they can then jump into the text and access it with more success. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, absolutely. So every group has something different that they're working on. So I like to think of it as accuracy is my number one priority, and I'm working on word work and things like that. And I'm also using the Decodable Readers Protocol through Student Achievement Partners. You can find that on achievethecore.org to guide my reading with accuracy, echo, choral, buddy, independent reading. And then after accuracy, we're moving to phrasing. Phrasing moves to expression, and that's really creating that fluency into comprehension. So that's what guides my what is this group working on. Before I talk about what my kids are doing independently, I just want to point out that we went from a structure where levels were guiding what we were doing in our groups. Level E should be working on this, level J should be working on this, to my students are guiding what I'm doing in my group. I'm watching them closely, and that's what should be happening, right? I'm watching them closely, and we're addressing those needs in the group. Real quick, sorry, I've been talking for a while, but so independently outside of my group, when they're not working with me, we want to make sure that they're also having purposeful learning outside. And so I don't know if you guys have heard about the platform Seesaw. It's really came into light during remote learning. And so they all have 3 Seesaw assignments that they have to complete. One is a foundations sentence dictation. One is they are reading the book. They're going to record themselves reading. So let's say we're reading Thorny Devil in group. They're going to record themselves reading. It's like a check-in for me. They'll record that independently. And then they also have a comprehension question on Seesaw that they have to answer about Thorny Devil, which is a Geodes text. And then they also have to read at least one Geodes book outside of my group. They get to choose whatever piques their interest. It could be past books. I sit out future books. I'm not limiting them to anything. I want them to choose the text that they want. And then also, they have a foundations assignment, usually a paper foundations assignment that includes marking or something like that. So,
April, just really quick, this is Danielle. I was just thinking too, like
Danielle.
the listeners, I don't know, can they differentiate our voices? Yeah. But
they probably can.
As I was listening to April, like it's so nice to hear you kind of go through what a day in the life of a first grader looks like and sounds like. And I told you I just kind of jumped in with Geodes, and prior to Geodes, I'm pulling from like ReadWorks, I'm pulling from lots of different books that I have, going up to the library and kind of finding text sets and really connecting it. So if they're reading about the Brown versus Board of Education, maybe they're reading another article about Thurgood Marshall or, other topics that are connected. But it's nice to hear you really talk about those components and what that looks like, because our third graders are also used to that. So when they're coming to third grade, they're making those connections. So yesterday when I jumped in, I told them, I said, you guys are kind of like my experimenting group right now. Let's see, let's jump into this text. And it's nice for me as a teacher to also reflect and kind of think, okay, we did that yesterday too. We did that. Oh, we did this a little bit differently, but it just reminds us that we're vertically aligned and just supporting our students throughout their entire education here at school.
Yeah. I was thinking something similar, Danielle. It must make so much more sense for students to, like, in your classrooms on a daily basis, feeling like these things connect and they make sense together. I learn something over here and it connects to the next thing. And then like you're saying, from year to year, seeing that connection too, I could imagine as a student feeling like much more confident than every teacher teaches something different and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I want to say now that I want to have you both back on again. We have to do this again because we could just keep talking.
I have so many things we didn't get that I could talk about. We like to talk.
I'm looking at the notes. I'm like, we didn't get to half of what we prepared for with you all. So.
Well, and I think that also just shows, I appreciate listening to all your episodes too, because it's just so nice to talk with people that are passionate about this work, and it just feels good. It feels good to know that we're learning and continuing to be
together.
learners. Yeah.
Okay, I will do a little teaser for what we might be able to talk about next time is debunking the learning to read, reading to learn, because what you both shared is that that's not a thing. And we know from our episode with the fantastic Nell Duke that she also agrees that it's not a thing. And lots of other researchers do too, but you all showed in practice that it's not a thing. You know, we don't in K2 learn to read, and then in 3 and above read to learn. It's both and all the time. I mean, I even think from birth, you know, all the way through. It's not like, you know, even when Presley was a baby, I was reading her books that she couldn't read on her own. So she was not learning to read.
Yeah, those are the first strands that develop in humans is knowledge. Yeah. And so why would we cut it off and stop with that? You know, every kid brings so much to the table. So,
and they're so curious about those things.
So curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a whole podcast just about that.
We're going to. You're invited back again.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You guys are awesome.
Before we leave, I know there were some things we didn't get to. So if there was anything that you really want to hit, feel free to jump in. But we definitely want you all to leave us with a piece of advice for our listeners.
Well, I took a peek at the notes, and I thought it was funny that Danielle and I both had kind of the same advice without discussing it. I saw what you typed in there, Danielle, and I was like, "Hey, I was going to say that."
Did you see my essay? Does that surprise you?
I read it, and it was great. But I guess the thing I want to leave with is that we are educators and we have to continue to learn. Like I said before, we had to unlearn a lot and be vulnerable and flexible. And because we were able to do that, it's really changed my life. It lit a fire inside of me to explore the research, to get my master's. When all this started, I was like, master's in literacy, it has to happen now. And just the continuing need for more knowledge about this, just to continue to learn as educators, because we know that when we do that, it benefits our students.
So my advice is similar to, you know, when I kind of started reflecting, there's so much to learn. There's so much, you know, I know we have so much in our minds, but we've been digging into neuroteach and just really how the brain works. And we're bringing this to our students as well. So in their RSEL lessons, they're learning about how their brains work. And I think that's been so powerful. So my advice is just, I think of this chapter 12 in this book, and Glenn Whitman says, you know, teachers are researchers. And it says that students spend more than 1,000 years learning to get better at their core knowledge and skills. And it's rare that a teacher will get above 30 hours a year. And at first that kind of like hooked me. I was like, I feel like I'm learning like so much. And we're learning these skills. We're learning so much to improve our practice. But it also makes me reflect on just how we're building our own knowledge and supporting our own passions and really being learners in front of students. So, you know, speaking my own truth, I feel like I'm learning something new to improve my practice every day. And my advice is to be a researcher of your students, for your students, with your students, and just evolve together, because our world is changing every day. And so we need to also have that mindset to change along with it.
It reminds me of Adam Grant's book, Think Again, which I was grabbing, but it's on my nightstand upstairs. That's like the premise, right? Like, be a scientist and unlearn the things be open to unlearning and open to new learning. So I love that it's so resonating with what's going on in my own reading world right now and what's happening, I think, in the real world very much.
Danielle, tell us the title of that book again.
It's Neuroteach, Brain Science and the Future of Education by Glenn Whitman and Ian. How do you say his last name? Is it Kelleher? Let me tap it out. Hang on.
It's a blue cover?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
It's going in my Amazon cart. I wonder if if we reach out, if we can get like a promo code or something. We'll work on that before this episode comes out. We'll see if we can get something for listeners.
Yeah, we just had Glenn do some PD with us a couple weeks
came
ago.
to our school.
Yeah.
That's so neat. Okay, can you share his email with us too?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know? Okay. I'm like, can you send us pictures and share people's contact information?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not going to say no while we're recording.
Of course not. You can have whatever you guys want. Okay.
Thank you all so much for all that you do every day. Good luck with the rest of your days. We know that you both have big days. Like, it's been a big week this week. So good luck with everything else that's happening today.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Lori. We appreciate you.
You too. All right. We'll talk soon. You're coming back.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. You too. Thank you for listening, literacy lovers. Remember, we have a new episode out every Friday, and we send a super helpful newsletter with follow-up content each Tuesday.
Be sure to visit our website to subscribe to our newsletter and podcast. It's literacypodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Literacy Podcast.
And please reach out with questions or ideas for podcast episodes. We love hearing from you. Melissa, what's our email address?
Melissa and Lori at literacypodcast.com.
We are so glad you're here to learn with us.